Hi everyone, this is Martha. I'm a relationship counselor, clinical sexologist. I'm born and bred Singaporean, Chinese, practicing in Singapore for the last 12 years. And I did get my doctorate in human sexuality from the US. So I have all this US related accreditation. But I actually haven't been back to the US for the last 12 years. And I identify as a non-US citizen, of course, and I'm very much Asian. So when what happened with Black Lives Matters came about, I really didn't pay too much attention to it because I felt like, okay, this is just what's happening in the US. But really, it's not that because we are all interconnected. So I have with me Dr. Donna Oriowo, and in the first video, she introduced more about herself and her work. And so I would like to, in this video, ask Dr. Donna to share with us a little bit more about um, what's been happening in the US. And just now in the previous video, you mentioned white supremacy. So what that means. So once again, Dr. Donna Oriowo, she's a sex therapist, licensed social worker, and has a doctorate in sexuality.
Hey y'all, thank you for inviting me back.
Yeah, so tell us more about the Black Lives Matters movement, the origin, what happened.
So the Black Lives Matter movement was started by three Black queer um, people. So Alicia Garza, Patrice Cullors, and Opal Tometi. I hope I said that right. But they started it back in 2013 after George Zimmerman was acquitted of charges for the murder of Trayvon Martin. So this movement, started a while ago. I mean, we are in what, 2021 now. So we're talking about a long while. I'm trying to think, what was I doing in 2013? That couldn't tell you. But this movement was, so I think that sometimes people think of it as being in reaction to, but I think that this is more of, I felt like this is just a continuation of a conversation that has already been happening in the US and abroad about the state of Black lives and about specifically how white supremacy continues to be a norm, how it continues to be normalized, and how it continues to its pervasive attacks on everybody. So I feel like it's more like that than any other
Yes.
way. Yeah.
I feel that what happened with George Floyd
Hmm.
actually sparked it. So what happened was, I think Black Lives Matters was not popular until like they reclaimed it again after his tragic death.
I think it depends on who you ask. Um, because for me, the emergence of Black Lives Matter in 2013, it never strayed, it never waned as far as I'm concerned. It was always forefront. I think that it became more prominent in non-Black spaces and especially to white others when George Floyd was murdered. I think that I'm trying to think about exactly the timing because so many deaths by police hands it's been just normalized, right? And when I think about when this happened, and I think this was 2020, so the year that the world shut down, right? Because we have COVID and no one is really moving. So many places were on quarantine or on lockdown, so you're not really moving. So this became even more egregious because there was this stillness, and you could not have missed it because we were in lockdown. You could not distract your way out of it because we were in lockdown. You could not go to work outside of it because we were in lockdown. So being able to be a part or be more privy to the movement was it almost became a requirement of life because we were in a lockdown and because I mean when people got time on their hands, we're gonna make sure that people know what. So for me, Black Lives Matter, yes, it started in 2013, but it never has waned. It has always been, for me, very front of mind. And I think that this death at this time in this lockdown, it didn't make it bigger. I think it made it more, it made it so that more people were aware. And by more people, I mean different people were aware. So specifically now you have white folk in prominent positions who cannot deny an awareness of this, and who now are no longer in a position to deny that racism is a thing. Because I think that for a lot of people, the election of Barack Obama as the president of the United States, it for them marked the end of a racist era, as opposed to a turning point in a racist era.
Yeah, it was terrible what happened during the Donald Trump reign. Let's hope things has to improve in the US. So for people who are ignorant about what happened with George Floyd, could you do a quick summary?
George Floyd was murdered by police officers.
Yes.
And that is as much detail as I'm willing to go into, mostly because what I find is that Black pain and suffering and Black deaths become almost a type of porn for people. So if you're interested in learning more of the ins and outs of that, if you're interested in watching the video, I'm sure they're out there on the internet for all to see. But I'm just going to leave it as he was murdered by police.
And there have been many, many murders.
Mm-hmm. Police sanctioned violence and murders. Yes.
Thank you so much for that. I watched some of it, the videos online, and it was really very heartbreaking, because he has family, and it just shouldn't happen to anybody.
I agree. It shouldn't. And white supremacy basically moves in the light that white people are actual people, and that Black people are more animals than we are people. And the way, and I think that oftentimes people feel that they are separate, that what's going on to Black Americans doesn't have to matter to them, except that white supremacy also says that no people are people who are not white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. That if WASPs, as you will, so white Anglo-Saxon Protestant people are the pinnacle of all people. White people, as they have defined it, are more generalized, but still people. But if you are not a white person, you are then basically just variations of people or animal. That the further you are from whiteness, the more animalistic you become. But white people are the only people. That is white supremacy, which means that everybody is absolutely affected, even when they don't think they are. So I think that oftentimes, and it has been my experience, so you correct me if I'm wrong, but my experience has been that there have been a great deal and a great number of Asian people who feel like they are not included in this, and that this does not matter to them. I'm like, it's that white people don't think of you as being real people either. They think of you as being less than. They pick and choose which parts of Asian culture they want to take or move into. They're almost assimilating some certain Asians, right, into whiteness and trying to erase the identity. And through this erasure, I mean, there's the preference for the white skin, there's the eyelid surgeries that people are having, and how there's a constant augmentation of self to fit what white supremacy says is best, what's going to make you money, what's going to get you out there, what's going to have people say that you're most attractive, right? And for Latinx folk, it's the same. It's a for all people involved, there is almost a demonization of our sexuality and othering of it to try and say that, oh, you know, Asians are like geishas. They're sexually giving and subservient to those who they would be sleeping with. So people are moving in this idea that you're secret freaks, as it were, in the bedroom, and that this makes you more desirable because you'll also be submissive and give to your partners. Whereas Latinx folk are seen as being spicy and passionate, and they have their sexuality. So many of us have our sexuality reduced to the racist notions that white supremacy has come up with. And yet we find ourselves in a space where we think that we are exempt from the Black Lives Matter movement. I am of the thought that if you are not a part of the Black Lives Matter movement, then you must be a part of the white supremacist movement. It's one or the other. Where do you stand? It's this or it's that. Because there's no standing in the middle here. Because if you're not supporting the Black Lives Matter movement, chances are you benefit from white supremacy in some way, shape, or form. And the closer your skin is to white, the straighter your hair is, the more that they have deemed or picked you as being acceptable, as being the acceptable other, the more they have integrated you into white supremacy, and the less of you get to be. There's a loss of culture, there's a loss of self, there's a loss of identity when you choose to identify and be identified within the context of the white supremacist industrial complex.
I hear what you're saying. What you're saying is Black Lives Matters actually is important for all of us, because we definitely don't want a world of white supremacy. I feel that a lot of people are just ignorant and they don't know what's going on and they don't want to care. And it's important to care because it involves all of us, because we do not want the world to be a dangerous and scary place where there's hate and discrimination. It just is as simple as that. In our
and
work,
it's harder to access pleasure. It's hard to access pleasure if you're constantly in a space of fear and wondering about being othered and racism and all this. When you're constantly in that space, it becomes that much more difficult to access everything that you are, to know what feels good for you, in general as well as in a sexual sense. So, I mean, all of this also cuts you off from your sexuality, which is no fun for no one.
yes. Or even just be functional in life and to just do your best work and thrive.
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness. So this is video 2 of a very quick summary of the Black Lives Matters movement. And in the third video, I want to unpack more about why it's important to be allies and what we can, each and every one of us, do with regards to racism and anti-discrimination, really.